Hey there guys, Dirty H here and welcome back to episode 9 of Europe in Detail. In this episode we're building some big cliffs up behind Gotsberg beach in this area here where there's nothing else. And in between two cliffs is going to be a little wee plateau that we're going to build a cool old castle on. That's right, you guys have asked for it, here it comes. This is definitely one of the more iconic builds in the city, so let's start with some cliffs and stuff and make an area for the castle to be built on, and then we can get into actually building the castle. So bearing in mind that I have to get a road up here to get some access up to the castle, that's the first thing I really focus on. So I terraform this out in like levels or platforms, and then I look to try and snake a road up using these platforms to just sort of gain height up to the height that the castle will sit at. Then I look to make one part of it really steep, massive, sort of like imposing almost. And the idea here is I've downloaded some cliff and rock props that are super realistic, and the creator that's made these, their name is Vecchio Cristo. They are worth checking out on the workshop. They've got some really cool stuff aside from these rocks here that I use. So what I'm looking to do with these is just make the very top of this cliff look even steeper than we can get with the terrain. Some of the parts of it may even be inverted, and these rock props from Vecchio Cristo have got an awesome texture on them. And it's worth mentioning too that this user Vecchio Cristo has YouTube videos and tutorials on map making that are absolutely premium videos, and I highly recommend checking those out if you're interested. I'll leave a link in the description for this video. But using a few different shapes of his rock props here in different formations, POing them and spinning them in different ways, we create a really cool realistic looking cliff here, and we top it off with some grass and some trees, and she's looking pretty slick. So now I can make a little plateau for the castle to sit on here, and this is just up above our little swervy road that goes around the coast by Gotsberg beach. And I make just the right area here so that I can create a cliff below it as well as the one that we just created above it. Then I flick through a couple of different castles off the workshop and settle for this medieval type castle that looks really cool. The textures are great and it's the right colour, I think. So I put this in place and then continue making cliffs directly around it so that it really looks like the castle's been built to the contours of the land. And then before I carry on with the castle, I can carry on putting the road in so that it's got access. So I swerve a road up here and then spend a fair bit of time easing out the corners and making sure the gradient is pretty good and workable. And then once that's in place, we can return back up to the castle and start detailing it a bit. And the first thing I want to put in here is the usable stuff. So we're going through an order of necessity again that I've mentioned earlier, and we start with the car parks, and there's also going to be a little maintenance shed here as well. And what I want to do with this is I really want to make a custom entrance to the castle. So I want to have my own pedestrian paths that draw people into the castle through extra bits that I've made. And also I put entertainment cubes up here that require service vehicles, so I hide a couple of roads really shady so that they've got access and they don't pop up too many notifications for me. And the other notable thing that I do here is put in the concrete pedestrian paths as well, because we work around these much like we have earlier in the series. And I look to extend the ruins of the castle here with various other props that I've downloaded with the same sort of style, stone and stuff I guess. And I guess I didn't really need to add any of this at all. I could have just left the castle and put some grass around it and hey, it's done, but it's really not my style. I wanted to make these custom entryways here that drew people through with real paths so you could see people actually walking around and through the castle. And I'm really happy with how this first bit comes out. You'll see here it does just look like an extension of this original castle that we've put up here. There's a few flowers and stuff around and it sort of looks untamed, but I think that looks great. So the next bit we move on to, I want to try and make a retaining wall, and I use some old castle props here. One is an archway, and I've got one of the pedestrian paths going through it, which looks cool later on. And you'll also notice here that I have a road going straight through the maintenance building. I'm going to hide it so it just looks like access to the building. You won't see the road from there on. And this is going to give access to our 2 entertainment cubes that we have up here. These are required to draw pedestrians up here, otherwise they have no reason to come up. And that's because I've used PO on the castle so that I can get it the right size. I use surface networks and ploppable asphalt to make this second layer of grass, so it sort of looks like this second level's on stone, and then I put a few ruins and stuff up here, and this is where the entertainment cube is going to be. And jiggling these roads around so that they're in the right place is not really a fun job. It's very tedious. There's absolutely nothing beautiful about what I'm doing right now. This is completely out of necessity. So these and the pedestrian paths have to be in the correct place and people have to be using them before I carry on with the detailing. But I'm hoping to get some people right up here in the actual castle ruins, and then some other people at some other nearby ruins as well. So for the citizens to get to this cube up here, it's going to look like they're walking through the archway and then up and coming out the ruins at the top, and then just across a little wee piece of grass to, yeah, some really cool old ruins that we detail very shortly. I place a big sort of warehouse slash shed in here as the maintenance building I mentioned earlier at the foot of this road that leads up to the entertainment cubes. So it looks like any traffic going up here just sort of is going into the shed. And then we look to place a pretty no frills car park out here as well. Looking back at this now, I probably should put some sort of turning bay up here for people that go the wrong way, or like buses and tours that need to turn around, but I can look to add that later on. So I want to add lots of trees around the car park so that we can't see it from the ground, we can just see the castle, and then I add some nice well kept lawns and grounds around the castle. I've made this entire front area pretty no frills so that it doesn't take any of the attention away from the castle. And next I push on to detailing around where one of the entertainment cubes is, and I want to make this look like an old petrified wood sort of pergola was here and it's fallen down, and for whatever reason people are gathering underneath it and it seems to be a hot spot. So wherever citizens tend to gather in towns and cities in this game tends to draw your eye, so hence why I'm just going to put a bit more detail in around where these people are gathering. And I'm trying to have it follow the shape of the ruins here, and the ruins that these are on are actually, I think they're part of the vanilla game, and I've PO'd it and squeezed it down considerably smaller, but the texture on this ruin matches the castle almost perfectly, hence why I've used it. So we are trying to follow the shape of that with the way that we put this wood. This is the same pile or piece of wood that I've used elsewhere in the city on the waterfronts and such. And you can see here I've added a few like flowers and stuff around that look pretty cool as well. They look a bit overgrown. And I've also tried to put a couple of pieces of wood over to the side to make them look like they've either fallen down or there was a couple maybe left over from construction that have just sat there for hundreds of years. Now when it comes to terraforming up behind the castle, I wanted to make it so that there was a cliff directly behind it as well, so it was nestled sort of in between two cliffs. Now in hindsight, this probably isn't the best idea because it gives quite the vantage point to anyone who's brave enough to get down to the top of the cliff. They can basically look in and see everything in the castle. So I think in future I'm going to look to add some sort of like battlement wall across the top of the cliff that was constructed with the castle, but in the meantime we'll just have to bear with how I've made it here. And using the same methods and props as before, we use Vecchio Cristo's awesome rock prop for the cliff and add in some grass texture as well. I found these really amazing Roman stairs on the Steam Workshop ages ago, and I've been dying to put them in Gotsberg, but I've been trying to think of the best way to put them in, and I've had to try and make the right incline to get them in, and it's time to do it here. I am very quickly running out of real estate in this little town, and I want to make a point to get them in this particular village, not one of the next two. So yeah, here we go. So originally I wanted to PO the stairs and manipulate the size of them a little bit, but I couldn't do that. Half of them disappeared. It must have sub meshes that don't translate to PO very well. So I've had to settle for the base asset, and that's not a problem. It just means I have to use these Terra networks so that I can bring the level of terrain in nicely to the edge of the stairs, and then I plan on running two roads down next to it and having some gardens and stuff like that. Couple of buildings worth noting here. I've got an old stone like fire station, or actually I think it's the police station at the top of this hill here, and then I've got a slightly more modern shopping centre down on the bottom corner with a little wee cafe, and in between I'm sure to have a couple of old stone buildings as well. I changed this area up just a little wee bit by adding like a scrubby cliffy area just behind these buildings, but I think that looks pretty cool. Found this really cool old stone Red Cross building on the workshop, so that's the first building I put in on the other side here. The reason we're putting services around this area is because this is pretty much bang in the middle of Gotsberg, and the access to either side of the town from here is pretty good. Now I'll carry on putting the same types of gardens in that we put on the other side on this side, and there's no particular pattern to this. This is just random flowers and bushes and stuff everywhere. I guess the only constant is I've got a little wee bush that runs around as like a hedge that frames the garden. And these stairs are starting to look really cool. I think these gardens make it look neat and sort of make it stand out a little bit more. Originally I wanted these stairs to sort of actually be a method of getting from one level to another, which they still are, but I guess they're more of the feature with the way that I've built it here with the gardens either side. I mean, you can just as easy get up the road, for instance, as you could up these stairs, but they look really neat, and we build something at the top really soon that sort of makes it all come together. So I finish up with the garden here by placing in the last of the flowers, spreading them around, making sure they change colour, and then we can move on to finishing the buildings on the Red Cross side of the road. And I'm keeping these ones quite a lot older on purpose. This is sort of an old side of the street. There's lots of Amsterdam type buildings here, lots of apartments, and this looks really cool. And these little wee thin sort of only 1 or 2 square wide places are really easy to put on steep inclines. And as we transition up towards the top, I originally tried a big cathedral building up here, but it just looked massively overkill, so I've decided on this smaller monument slash fountain, And we just do a bit of quick developing around this with some ploppable concrete and some stairs, and we put an old archway in as well and some scrubby bush sort of growing around the place to make it look aged. And I'm pleased that I went with this more simple design than banging a big cathedral up here, because it did look massively overkill for what Gotsberg may be, and the stairs are a big enough, you know, thing on their own, I think. So the last thing that I do, admittedly off camera, is just go around and put some nice lights in, and it is complete. I think the castle looks great nestled up here on the top of this cliff. I hope you guys have enjoyed the ride, and I hope those of you that have asked for a castle have enjoyed this episode especially. In the next episode, I can safely say I build something that I have never dreamt I would ever build before, and it's very, very cool, so I hope you guys tune in for that. If you don't already subscribe, you could consider subscribing. I would really appreciate that, and at least give the video a thumbs up if you've enjoyed it, and I will see you on the next episode. Take it easy. See ya.